March 2020. A virus spreads across the globe. COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, would go on to claim over 6 million lives worldwide. It shut down economies, rewired society, and tested global health systems to the brink. But imagine a world where this virus was twice as deadly. In this alternate timeline, COVID-19 doesn't have a 1% mortality rate, it has 2%. This small statistical difference creates a vastly more tragic, destabilizing, and transformative pandemic. Entire nations falter, societies change, and history takes a darker, more uncertain turn. This is the story of a more lethal COVID pandemic, and the world it leaves behind. COVID-19, caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, emerged in late 2019. It spread rapidly, aided by modern air travel and asymptomatic transmission. Governments initially underestimated the threat, and lockdowns began only after hospitals started overflowing. By 2024, official numbers reported over 6 million deaths worldwide, though excess mortality estimates suggest the real toll may be closer to 15 million. Most fatalities occurred in the elderly or those with underlying conditions. The global economy shrank by over 3% in 2020, and recovery varied wildly across nations. Vaccines arrived within a year, a scientific triumph, but distribution was unequal. While devastating, the pandemic did not bring about the collapse of any major power. In this alternate history, the SARS-CoV-2 virus mutates early in its evolution, perhaps due to zoonotic recombination or environmental factors in the original outbreak cluster. The result? A strain with a significantly higher case fatality rate, around 2% on average. This doubles the global death toll, but the consequences ripple far beyond the numbers. Higher fatality rates destabilize healthcare systems more quickly. Fear grows more intense. Governments react differently, and the balance between safety and freedom shifts radically. The first major difference: faster collapse of healthcare systems. By April 2020, overwhelmed hospitals in Italy and New York are no longer exceptions. They are the norm worldwide. The higher mortality rate means even younger patients sometimes die, causing panic among age groups that felt relatively safe in our timeline. Public health responses harden. Lockdowns are implemented sooner and enforced with far greater severity. Martial law is declared in cities like Los Angeles, Manila, and Johannesburg. National Guard troops man testing centers. Quarantine breakers face jail time in many countries. Global travel collapses. Airlines go bankrupt at a faster rate. By summer 2020, nearly 90% of international flights are suspended indefinitely. Tourism becomes non-existent, stranding millions of migrant workers and travelers. Economies enter deeper recessions. The global economy shrinks by 6.8% in 2020 alone. Small businesses vanish by the millions. Entire industries, hospitality, aviation, sports, essentially shut down. Civil liberties erode. Surveillance states expand, with China and even Western nations adopting aggressive contact tracing through phone apps and mandatory biometric data. Emergency powers once considered unthinkable become normalized. Vaccination becomes even more urgent. Governments pour unprecedented resources into vaccine development, accelerating mRNA research and new delivery technologies. However, rollout is slower due to disrupted infrastructure. Anti-vax sentiment is muted. Fear of death silences most resistance. Global death toll by 2025, 20-30 million. The psychological toll is incalculable. A generation of young people comes of age in fear, isolation, and economic chaos. As the world enters the second post-pandemic decade, society begins to stabilize, but in new and unfamiliar forms. A new public health era dawns. The World Health Organization is given expanded global authority. Most countries agree to international pandemic treaties that include shared research, manufacturing stockpiles, and military-enforced quarantines in future outbreaks. Urban life is redefined. High-density cities see population declines. Remote work becomes permanent for white-collar jobs. Office real estate collapses. Suburban and rural living becomes the norm in much of the global north. Education transforms. With years of intermittent school closures, a hybrid learning system becomes standard. Students in both developing and developed nations rely on tech platforms for 50–70% of their education. Major tech companies essentially become shadow school systems. Political systems realign. In the United States, the federal response under Trump is even more catastrophic. The 2020 election is delayed, causing a constitutional crisis. Biden eventually takes power in a deeply fractured country. New populist and authoritarian movements rise on both left and right, fueled by pandemic trauma. In the global south, some governments collapse entirely. The virus exacerbates inequality, causing new waves of migration and international tensions over vaccine hoarding and economic reparations. Mental health crisis explodes. Depression, PTSD, and anxiety become the dominant public health issues of the late 2020s. Suicide rates rise sharply. Many countries declare mental health emergencies and institute universal therapy programs by 2030. Climate change is temporarily slowed. The economic contraction causes emissions to fall dramatically in the 2020s, but adaptation remains slow. Governments, already battered by COVID, are reluctant to invest in long-term resilience. 2 decades after the dark pandemic, the world is both stronger and more traumatized. Medicine is transformed. The rapid development of mRNA vaccines during COVID-20, as it came to be called, paves the way for treatments against cancer, HIV, and even some genetic disorders. AI-assisted diagnostics become common, enabling a proactive healthcare model. Global life expectancy eventually rebounds and surpasses pre-pandemic levels by 2050. Society becomes semi-resilient. Schools, businesses, and governments maintain permanent pandemic protocols, with infrastructure ready to activate in 48 hours. Universal basic income trials that began as emergency relief during the pandemic evolve into semi-permanent welfare systems in many countries. Geopolitics shift. The United States remains divided politically but avoids full collapse. China becomes more assertive, capitalizing on early domestic recovery and regional alliances. The European Union tightens integration to prevent fragmentation. Africa emerges with a younger immune population and surges in biotech and remote industries. Digital life becomes the norm. People live, learn, work, and socialize primarily online. This fuels both innovation and deep loneliness. Birth rates continue to decline globally. Spirituality and philosophy undergo a renaissance as people seek meaning in a world marked by death and disconnection. Memorial culture dominates. Every nation builds COVID memorials, vast, somber monuments to the millions lost. An annual Global Remembrance Day is observed on March 11th. The pandemic becomes the defining trauma of the 21st century, akin to World War II or the Black Death in earlier eras. So what does the world of 2060 look like after a pandemic twice as deadly? Stronger public health systems, but more authoritarian governments. Accelerated medical innovation, but at the cost of millions of lives. Digitally connected societies, yet physically isolated and emotionally fragile. A global consciousness of mortality, driving both progress and pessimism. In many ways, humanity is wiser, more prepared, and more unified. But the cost of this transformation was steep. The scars, psychological, economic, cultural, will linger for generations. History turned darker, but also more determined. Donald Trump. In this timeline, Trump's downplaying of the deadlier virus causes even deeper backlash. After delaying the election amid public outrage, he's removed from office in disgrace. Legal battles dominate his post-presidency life, and he becomes a cautionary tale in history books. Dr. Anthony Fauci becomes a global icon, akin to Jonas Salk. After the pandemic, he's appointed to head an expanded UN Health Security Agency. His career shapes global public health for decades, and his memoir becomes a foundational text in pandemic studies. Elon Musk. The chaos of the pandemic accelerates automation and space infrastructure. Musk fast-tracks Starlink and Martian colonization as human survival imperatives. By 2040, he is seen not just as an innovator but a geopolitical actor, some even calling him the first corporate nation. The COVID-19 pandemic changed our world, but in another world, it changed everything. Because when death knocks louder, history answers with new urgency.